Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wickersoft's webinar series. We have another exciting edition on Agile today, specifically, what does Agile PPM mean to the PMO? My name is Mike Otranto, and I'm a strategic account specialist at Wickersoft. I'm also joined on today's webcast with Jim Patterson, who leads in the business development role. The line will not be open for questions, but feel free to email us directly, and we'll be happy to answer your questions that way. We'll be including our contact information at the end of the webinar. If for some reason you get distracted or pulled away during the webinar, no need to worry. I will be emailing the recording and the slide deck of today's presentation. I will now hand off the webcast to Jim Patterson. Jim?
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the introduction and welcome everybody. Thanks for taking some time with us today for this event. So let's get into the topic of what does Agile PPM mean to the modern PM.
Muted.
Some of the topics we'll be covering today is relating today's challenges regarding this topic as far as Agile PPM and its impacts on the PMO. We'll talk about unifying work management and the concepts around that. We'll talk about the concepts of Bimodal PPM, or including Agile PPM, and give some overview and some use cases of how those can be tackled. We'll give you some demonstrations of how those things can be done with technology that exists today. And then after that, we'll cover some additional use cases you might consider, and then we'll wrap up with some summary, some next steps, and some special offers for you for attending today. Well, with that, let's move forward. And let's get into the first area of today's challenges. As in many of our webinars, really the driving force to this is digital transformation and the rise of technology. Organizations today, more and more, regardless of whether we were considered more low-tech, brick and mortar type of companies, more and more becoming software companies at their core because of the way we have to address the marketplace and the way we have to optimize our business processes. If we look across all different industries, we can cite a number of different examples where the traditional department stores have been supplanted by the Amazons and other online providers of the world. Places where we used to get entertainment, where we used to wait in line at places like Blockbuster Video, have now been replaced by streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, etc. And even transportation, things like Uber, even getting bicycles these days can be done via apps and technology to connect the rider with the driver or the provider of that transportation service. Even some things as mundane or as everyday as getting soft drinks from a fast food restaurant have become more and more technologically driven with more computerized types of screens for selecting drinks and those types of things. So what does this mean though for Agile PPM? Well, what it means is it really impacts almost all aspects of an organization. From the executives that have to build strategies and come up with new approaches and business models for addressing the marketplace and take advantage of these changes in this digital transformation age so that we can remain relevant and then also maximize new opportunities that present themselves. Definitely a challenge in this day and age. And if we don't respond at the executive level, we can get left behind. And then the PMOs, usually those strategies manifest themselves into initiatives and projects and programs that need to realize those executive strategies. And more, since they're technology driven to a larger degree than ever before, PMOs are managing a higher degree of technology projects along with more of the traditional projects that they've managed in the past and bringing about its own challenges, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then we have our software development teams that have to actually deliver on that promise and execute and develop the things that need to be promised to the customer. And when we do so, we're using new methods to be more streamlined, more agile in our approaches, and it changes the way we do business overall and interact with the PMOs and the executives. And then ultimately, when we deliver, we have to support this technology, and the support organizations have to be tied in so that we can effectively provide customer service and support the technologies that we are releasing. So ultimately, with that landscape, change is the new norm. So in the old days in the project and portfolio management business, we could go in a more steady as she goes, plan and execute, more phased or stage gate type of process over long duration projects. It was a little more slow-paced environment, and we would plan ahead, and then we would work that plan and make some adjustments as needed along the way. But business and the environment and the landscape has changed to where it's much more fast-paced, much more unpredictable. The marketplace is changing, technology is changing quicker than ever, and we have to constantly be planning for and responding to change. Otherwise, we run the risk of being not relevant, or even delivering the wrong things at the wrong time to the marketplace, or delivering things that are no longer needed or wanted. And the idea is that means that we have to have new methods and systems and practices in place in order to respond to that new environment. To that end, people are more and more using agile approaches and the variations of that in executing on their projects. CollabNet version 1 does a state of agile survey every year, and the 12th annual came up with an interesting statistic that 97% of the organizations responding say that agile is being practiced somewhere in those organizations. Not that they've adopted it straight across the board for everything, but it's being adopted somewhere in that organization. And I think that is very relevant to the topic today. That's up from 80% of those organizations in just 2011. And I would say just from that number, the participants that are using some Agile is almost reaching saturation as far as almost all organizations are doing it somewhere, somehow. And ultimately, that's driving an increased situation where we have silos of information across different systems. Organizations have tended, through necessity, to adopt different tools and applications and solutions to address different types of work. So in these silos that are depicted here, for example, traditional project management was dealt with by traditional project management and PPM type of solutions for project and portfolio management. And Microsoft Project and Project Server, Project Online was a good case from a Microsoft perspective to do those types of projects and handled those things end to end very nicely. But as organizations start doing more software development and application management, they start getting into more integrated development environments and software development environments that have possibly their own tools built in, like in Visual Studio, or other tools like Jira or version 1 that help them or more conducive or been designed for more agile types of approaches for software development. And that even extends to new product development today. And on top of that, a constraining factor on the availability of our resources may be driven by our service management, or our more ad hoc or operational type of work, where incidents, problems, and changes come up. And those systems actually are a drain or draw on our ability to deliver on the other types of projects, meaning we have to factor that in as we make our commitments and as we resource our organizations. The idea is that there end up being a lot of parallel processes, multiple entry points of work. Resources who have to execute on this work need to monitor multiple systems and even separate spreadsheets to figure out what the totality of their work is. And then there's all these different department silos that make it confusing as to what even the organizational priorities are. So how do we handle that? Well, today's challenges are organizations, as I had mentioned, are confronted with digital transformation, and that's not going to stop anytime soon. It's here to stay. And the IT leaders today are recognizing that there is a need to innovate more, manage the uncertainty better, and to establish more agility so that we can deliver quicker to the marketplace and also respond and make sure we're hitting the mark when it comes to going to market. But we must do this while simultaneously running the business. So even though maybe development teams are responding and find benefits in using agile approaches, the organization and the executive levels and the CFO, they need to run the business and hit performance and financial goals. And they're looking at KPIs and measurements for ways that those projects are going to deliver and help them financially monetize that and run a profitable business. So what that means is we might have varying cultures, approaches, and attitudes in different places within the organization. And somehow we have to make those all work together to the benefit of all, ultimately the organization as a whole. So to that end, bimodal capabilities, and we'll define that in a little bit, are becoming necessary and crucial for organizations to adopt and execute on in a capable manner. So if we don't do this, all the dysfunction that you see here on this slide is definitely possible, and many organizations suffer this today, whether it be low response times, disconnected systems and data, confused and unhappy employees, which can result in ineffective ways of working, or even to the extent of high turnover that it breeds. The idea here is that I'm not going to go through all these individually, but the idea is if we don't address this issue, all of these are likely to happen to some degree in our organization as we try to put band-aids on the issue. So how does this really address or impact the PMO? You know, technology has become such a highly complex landscape of features and functionality, versus a means of empowering human creativity, innovation, and intelligence, meaning we have to add value, we have to incorporate more technology into the mix. So as we look into the building blocks here of the PMO capability must, and if we look at the lighter shade faces of the building blocks, traditionally the things that we thought of that a PMO was in their charter, and obviously all PMOs have different charters and different organizations of what's expected of them. But to be able to do resource management and portfolio management, do schedule and task management, in some cases financial management from a project-related perspective, team collaboration and all the reporting and BI are some of the more traditional things since the very early days of the project management office, are things that we expect a project management office to do. But in this new landscape, we need to add or layer on what's in those darker faces of these blocks. We have to factor in agility where they may not have been before, using older, more waterfall governance-driven processes. We have to look at more total work management, meaning there's all different types of work and tools in an organization. In order to effectively manage our resources and our commitments, we have to factor in all different types of work and the impact it has on our ability to deliver. From an integration perspective, the whole idea of big monolithic systems in organizations that are going to take care of everything has been kind of debunked, and that people are using best of breed tools for a variety of different purposes, and having the ability to integrate those things is very important to have them work together seamlessly if we want to have these things work without having a lot of manual mashup and a lot of manual effort put together to actually create comprehensive pictures for our leadership and other stakeholders in the process. And simplicity is another one. As technology becomes more robust and more advanced, just because there's complexity in the algorithms and the capabilities of the software, more and more because of the mobile devices and the demands of the marketplace and the advances in software user experience, the market expects a certain level of simplicity in their interaction or user experience with our solutions, even though what's behind them may be very complex and very advanced. And then overall automation. Manual processes are big drains on time and resources, and actually can be considered non-productive and overhead time if we're doing things manually where they can be automated. We'll talk about today some ways that we can maybe streamline processes and save some of that manual effort so that we can actually redeploy that effort to more high value types of tasks and efforts. So with that, let's talk about how we unify all this work management and the concepts behind that. Not only do we have different types of work, but we have different levels of work. We talked about the executives who have to basically come up with the strategies, and these involve strategic plans, overall enterprise architectures for our technology, our innovation and ideation processes on what it is that we're going to work on and how we're going to choose which product or bets we're going to make or what investments we're going to make. New product development. What are the lifeblood of many product companies? What products are we going to make our bets on and develop that we think the market's going to respond to and buy? And then just performance plans and budgets from a financial perspective and a metrics perspective. These things are all done at that higher executive level, but to realize the benefits of those strategies, we have to develop programs and portfolios that support that or help to contribute to achieving what's been set out and in that vision and that strategy. And that could include things like objectives, initiatives, services that we're going to provide, applications we're going to use and develop, and even quality things like Lean Six Sigma and different approaches that we might use. And then that even breaks down below that to we then need to do work execution and collaboration to support the programs and the portfolios. And that may include different types of work as we discussed about the silos, IT projects, customer-facing billable projects, application development and maintenance internally, service requests for the more operational things, general software development, even lower level to-dos, etc. As you can see, if you look at this as almost a matrix, it can get very complex as far as the different interactions and how these support one another. but ultimately we want these things to be in alignment, and so that the evolution of project and portfolio management is an enterprise work management environment that is sustainable and effective. So the Gartner Group, was one of the analysts that years ago thought that the move in the marketplace was to these larger monolithic do everything types of ERP systems that would actually handle all of these things. In reality, the move is more to best of breed, providing the right tool for the job. And in the portfolio level, where executive leadership in the PMO is really managing, things like Project Online provide that overall portfolio management capability that we're looking at. And why is that different? Well, the audience for that at the portfolio level, they're really interested in creating decision frameworks, selecting specific projects, or optimizing the portfolio, and then tracking those items that we choose to invest in at a high level to understand if we're on track and if we're hitting the metrics and the goals that we established. At the execution level, this is where things diverge quite a bit. These are where people are interested in project and resource management, managing the tactical details of project execution, and then they need to communicate that progress and the expenditures back to the business sponsors and management up through that portfolio level. But this is where people are using a myriad of tools today, especially with the cloud and easy access to these different tools. Where people are using things like Project, using Jira, using Visual Studio, Office 365 Planner, using SharePoint, and a variety of others. This is just a small sampling of what's out there today. And the idea is we want to accommodate and make sure that people are using the right tools for the job, but we still have to deliver for the organization and help track those investments and provide a holistic view to our executive leadership. So if we look at business strategy tied to work execution in that message, and we look at the blue bar across the top, which really represents an end-to-end portfolio management set of capabilities in Project Online, from the overall intake and approval and governance, really the demand management piece, the portfolio management for selection and alignment of the right projects, and then all the resource management, schedule management, potentially financial management, time management, and then all the business intelligence and analytics around that are things that we would do in a fully functional system. And Project Online does a great job of that in the cloud as a Microsoft offering. Now, to realize this unified work management vision, Wickersoft has developed OneConnect. It is an integration platform in the Microsoft cloud that actually uses Project Online as the center of the portfolio management universe. But then depending on the tools that will be feeding into that for portfolio visibility, it brings the connection and the synergy and the seamless working together of all those different tools and bringing that data together in Project Online. So if we would go down the left-hand side of this, traditional waterfall projects in Microsoft Project or the Project Web Access web version of that has always been part of the native onboard capabilities of Project Online, and it handles that very nicely today. They've even added some rudimentary Agile capabilities into Project recently in recent months that you might want to explore. But that might be good for people that haven't embarked upon an Agile journey yet. For those that have and have adopted tools already, the popular ones like Jira, Visual Studio, version 1, CAPPM, formerly Rally, are ones that are out there in the marketplace, and there's a variety of others. But the idea here is that you can manage a portfolio and your intake and your governance process in Project Online, but when it comes time to execute and detail out those plans, say you're using a more Scrum or Sprint or iterative-based approach, you can then do that in something like Visual Studio or Jira and have the team's data that's in there be fed on an automated basis back to Project Online with the relevant information that feeds to the PMO and to leadership, so we understand what's exactly happening so it doesn't become a black hole. And even lower level items like to-dos can feed into this, or operational work with things like Office 365 Planner, SharePoint, and other places where task-based management is happening. That can also feed in as well. And we'll talk about other use cases even beyond this. So the bimodal PPM use case, or the Agile PPM environment, really is not something that we've come up with. The term bimodal was actually coined by Gartner back in 2015 when they were discussing the term bimodal IT. And it's the practice of managing two separate and coherent modes of delivery, one focused on stability and the other on agility. Now, mode one defined as the more traditional PPM type of approach, more governance-driven type of approach, and it's defined as a linear approach to change. It emphasizes predictability, accuracy, reliability, and stability. That steady as she goes, phased or gate-based process. The analogy there is more like a marathon runner, projects with longer cycle times using approaches like waterfall. Now, mode two is agile. And talking about the modes or the trends that are happening in the market, this is a more non-linear approach. It involves learning via iterations, emphasizing agility and speed, and above all, managing and responding to uncertainty and change. Now, the analogy there is more like a sprinter, shorter cycle times, like 2-week iterations and sprints, using approaches like Agile, Lean, Kanban, and the variations thereof. The idea here is that we believe that there's a need and a strong need for both of these modes in organizations. An Agile purist may tell you that everything can be done in an Agile fashion, but there's more pragmatists out there that believe that there's a need for both of these things, both some governance and oversight, just enough, and then enough agility so that we can meet time to market and respond to the marketplace. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that can happen. Ultimately, there's disconnection oftentimes in the cultures and the approaches. The traditional PPM approach, usually championed by the PMOs, for example, often feels that the agile tools that are proliferating at the team level can often become a black hole to the PMO, and they don't have real-time visibility into business deliverables when the teams are using these approaches. It could even be sticky notes on a whiteboard to be that, for that matter. But they still need to manage and provide a holistic portfolio view and report to management so they understand how their investments are tracking. And they even have to do things like apply CapEx and OpEx to their projects still in order to meet the needs and the financial goals of the organization. Now, to the Agile teams, the traditional PPM approach, sometimes they feel that doesn't add value or even adds overhead or burden to them. They went Agile for a reason, to become more nimble, to become more responsive, and have more continuous delivery type of approaches. So the idea is, even though the needs of the organization are still there, they oftentimes have to do their Agile approach and then do duplicate things like entering time or providing status, not only in their Agile tools, but also to the PPM solution, meaning duplicate work on a lot of these areas, and that's not productive for anyone at all. So what we really need to do is find the right balance. We need to find the right amount of governance, visibility, insight, alignment, and control, the things that a good PPM process embodies, to make sure that we have a proper intake and evaluation, and that we are proven the things that are right for the organization to work on. But we should also have enough agility so that we can innovate, we can have good time to market and be responsive to those needs, and we can capitalize and monetize those things profitably for our organizations and make sure that we remain relevant into the future. So in our view today, a unified PPM and Agile solution doesn't need to be coming together visibly in different segments or silos depending on the tools that are being used. We feel that there's opportunity to manage one or more holistic portfolios that have programs, that have product lines, and other major groupings beneath which could have more traditional waterfall PPM-driven type of projects as well as Agile projects in the mix. This new hybrid world provides a central portal or view into all project work, but gives the flexibility to the user base that's being tasked with delivering on these projects, the latitude to use the tools that make the most sense for them in the way that they're doing the work and the type of work and type of projects that they're working on. Yet all that information being ultimately fed to that governing portfolio that leadership and the PMO depend on. So some of the options here in this is one, Microsoft Project has added some new Agile features into Project Professional over the last several months. The ability to do both waterfall and more iterative sprint-based projects in there. And so the idea being is that you could actually use the portfolio in Project Online. And in all of our scenarios today, Project Online is going to be used for the portfolio management type of capabilities, whether it be program and portfolio management, whether it be intake and investment approval, whether it be the financials or the overall resource capacity planning around all these efforts. That's the domain of the portfolio management solution. But for the teams that have to execute, the schedule, and plan these things and track them, you could still use Microsoft Project on the desktop or in the browser with PWA, Project Web Access, for your traditional waterfall scheduling, or in this case, some light agile planning as well. The idea is that those are native onboard capabilities that you can use to provide some agile and some traditional waterfall type projects. And as you can see down here a little bit, using the Microsoft Project tool, we have now views and a user interface that allows you to define sprints and iterations and move the cards or the tasks in a drag and drop fashion through those different phases. And we'll talk a little bit more about that today. Now, for the folks that have already embarked upon that Agile journey and already have selected other tools, the idea of using Wickersoft's OneConnect to allow them to use best of breed Agile tools that they may already have in place or have a need to use because it has additional capabilities beyond what the recent Microsoft Project Edition has. We still have the same portfolio level capabilities at that higher level, but if we choose to do Agile, we can actually use a seamless integration with Visual Studio using Wickersoft's OneConnect, meaning the project can be authorized in the portfolio management solution, Project Online, but then when it comes time to execute, all the planning details, the backlogs, the iterations, the sprints, and the updating of those stories and tasks within there can all happen by the team in Visual Studio as if they were just using Visual Studio by itself. And the OneConnect integration will seamlessly update the relevant data back to Project Online without the users having to do anything unnatural beyond what they typically do. Now, we still offer that same type of use case for those folks that are using Jira, another popular Agile tool that's out there. And the idea there is that it's supported by OneConnect as well with a productized connector. Ultimately, the portfolio management is still handled in Project Online. It does a great job of intake on ideas and project requests and business cases, and then being able to do portfolio alignment and prioritization to select the right projects based upon our budgets and our resource constraints and do scenario-based modeling. And then just the overall capacity planning. So as we understand the resources we think it's going to take to do different projects from the different tool sets, we can actually look at that and use that as a constraining factor in helping us select the projects, part of overall portfolio management and project selection. On the resource management side, we now have the opportunity with this combined integrated solution to where we can actually provide holistic capacity plans if we actually do resource planning in all of our different execution tools, Agile tools or non-Agile tools. The idea is Project Online can become the focal point to aggregate all that information so we can look at true capacity versus demand across all types of projects and all types of work. Even time management. As we start doing that, as people need to capture actuals in some organizations in timesheets, Project Online provides a centralized timesheet, but some of that work may be being generated in things like Visual Studio. To be able to update those tasks, it would generate chargeable elements within a timesheet, or even potentially allow you to enter that data within within Visual Studio and meet the needs of the organization by fulfilling your timesheet obligation without having to duplicate entry in two different places. All because of what Wickersoft's OneConnect provides from an integration perspective. And then the project intelligence. By bringing these rich data sets together and information from a variety of different project execution tools into a common portfolio and leveraging the power of Microsoft's Power BI and the Office 365 platform, we can now provide project intelligence across all types of projects, whether they be Agile, non-Agile, whether they be portfolio level or individual project or resource level types of information, and personalize these dashboards for the needs of the organization. And beyond that, we'll talk a little bit too about Microsoft Teams. Very popular and growing like wildfire out there in its adoption in the marketplace, but to provide unified collaboration and visibility, not just the roll-ups into a portfolio, but being able for a project team who has different tools that they need to access, whether it be for reporting or execution. This example would say in a common team in Microsoft Teams, you can actually maybe look at a Microsoft Project Online schedule, your Visual Studio backlog and your sprints, your Office 365 planner to-dos, or even the reporting from Power BI, all in a common forum, bringing these things together, which makes it even more exciting and even more interesting as a concept. So we talked about the bimodal IT by Gartner, but by having a portfolio level where we can roll up and categorize work, we can also support the implementation of scaled agile frameworks like SAFe, or a variety of other ones that are out there to help scale agile, so that we can get beyond just the team level tools that the agile teams are working at that level, and then roll these things up and categorize them and view them for leadership based upon their programs and their value streams and their release trains, all the way up to the different portfolios up to the enterprise. And the idea that can be structured with Project Online and put some framework around all these agile efforts that are going on at the different team levels. Ultimately, the message here is that it's a better together kind of solution. Project Online and Visual Studio Team Services, in this case, bring you the feedback loops you need and remove the disconnect that we talked about earlier on that sometimes happens between the PPM advocates and the PMO and the agile teams that are looking to respond quicker and do things in a more nimble and more agile fashion. So with that, let's move to a demonstration. All right, so what you should be seeing now is a project center in Microsoft Project Online. One of the advantages of doing your portfolio management in Project Online, and this represents a portfolio of projects that you might have, is the fact that it's really just part of the Office 365 platform and user experience. Though Project Online is licensed additionally, once it's enabled for your organizations and your users, it becomes part of your user experience, just like the other applications you'd have in Office 365, your email, your Word, PowerPoint, etc. And the idea is it leverages a lot of those tools in a project management and portfolio management context. Now, in this case, traditionally, you might be looking at a portfolio of projects, and natively, traditionally, they used Microsoft Project as its sole planning tool. So for example, if I was going to open up a project in here and select a project, I would traditionally actually open it up in either the browser or in Microsoft Project Desktop for creation or editing of that project plan. We would have templates in here to where you can have what they call enterprise project types, so that regardless of the different variations of projects you have, you can have templates for both the schedule template, the workflow, and the collaborative project site that people can collaborate on with things like documents and artifacts and issues and risks can all be baked into these templates, such that when you add a project to the portfolio using those types, it would bring all of those elements into it in a templated fashion, so it provisions that thing for you very nicely. The other piece is that this Project Online capability allows you to go even farther upstream than that. You might even want to tackle ideas or project requests and provide a portal where people can actually submit requests to be considered. And think about this as a funnel. Think about an idea where you might get hundreds of requests, of which maybe 50 of them you may consider seriously, to where you want to do a business case and invest more planning time in. And out of that, maybe you might approve 30 of them for your portfolio. This ends up being a forum where you can capture these things, have it be a parking lot for things that are good ideas but whose time has not come yet. And the idea is you can capture whatever information you want around these based upon capturing metrics, doing some preliminary scoring, and then putting some description of what it is you want, some prioritization based upon putting value statements, and even putting some metrics on categorizations to help you drive an initial score on those things. The idea is that you could have a common intake process for your organization that would include the approval of traditional projects, as well as the agile projects that you may execute elsewhere. The idea is you can have a consistent and common valuation method and approach, regardless of the type of projects it is, using Project Online. And then when the time comes through workflow approval or through just approving here from within the solution, you can promote these items to become project or portfolio items in that project center that we showed you at the outset. The idea is that very early on stage of idea and request, all the way through this process as well. Now, you can have as many different views in here as you like. So for example, if I wanted to go in here and look at an overall project summary, here I'm looking at a view of my projects by life cycle stage, the ones that are requested, ones that are approved, not started, ones that are in progress, etc. And the idea here is that you can have as many different pieces of metadata against your projects to define them any way you want, whether it be by project, life cycle stage, by portfolio, by product line, by applications, whatever it might be. And the idea here is that when you go into these projects, you know, driven in the traditional Microsoft project approach with waterfall types of approaches, you can actually go in and plan either in the browser or publish them from a Microsoft project desktop and have a web-based view of your projects as you go on through. And you can actually have different views in here, like with your portfolio, to look at this from different perspectives, whether it be a resource-oriented view, a schedule-oriented view, a cost-oriented view, etc. And the idea is you have the flexibility here to structure these projects any way you like, as you have in the past. And we've always had that capability in Project Online for those of you that are not aware. It's also a great way to share the current version of the news without sending PDFs and versions of that schedule around. Now, with this digital transformation and the advent of Agile, people are using more and different tools to get these things done. To that degree, instead of actually going in and selecting a project like this Fabricam project and saying, let's open it in Microsoft Project, if the team is going to execute on this in, say, Visual Studio and Visual Studio Team Services, you can actually open it, or if it didn't exist, it would actually create the project through that One Connect integration from Wickersoft. And the idea being is that instead of taking you to Project or Project Web Access, it would take you to the Agile tool so that you can actually work on that capability right in here. So here in Visual Studio Team Services, it's taking me to the Fabricam project where I can get right to the work that's in here. And because the work is structured and managed a little bit differently in here than you traditionally would do in project, here is where you can manage your full backlog for this particular project or product. I got epics, I could break that down to features. Those features can be broken down to user stories, and those can be broken down to the bugs and task level where we're actually executing on these types of things. Now, also on top of that, we can start planning our iterations and our sprints. So we can start planning our iterations and our sprints and dragging those backlog items into different time-boxed iterations. And as most people do in these, they start managing these things across a story or task board so that they drag and drop in a more Kanban type of fashion, and then drag these through the different stages, or possibly just open or edit these things within the elements that are in here. So just that might be analogous, people use oftentimes story points, but they can also plan effort hours, both planned, remaining, and completed hours, and pass that information seamlessly through the One Connect integration back to the portfolio in Project Online without the user in this area having to do anything other than manage the project within their own tool, which is Visual Studio Team Services. The idea here is that when you're done, it will, on a timed basis, automatically pick up that information without you having to push that information, though there are capabilities for you to push on demand if you have a deadline to meet or a report you're trying to generate. Now, on the back end of this, I could be coming into here, and if I drill into the schedule view, into this Fabricam project, the information that's being pushed back are the task level pieces of information that were in our backlog and into our sprints and iterations. But if we look at this, we're also bringing across the other data so we can view it in ways that we traditionally have not been able to look at it in Microsoft Project. In this case, let's say I want to look at my Visual Studio view. And in this Visual Studio view, notice it's a little different than I'm used to seeing in Microsoft Project. Notice that it's grouping this one by sprint, and notice the time box that's here as the tasks line up within that time box. And then within the sprint, I've got the different features and the user stories and the tasks associated with them that I'm working on in those particular sprints. Here in this feature, pay bill via mobile app, I've got two different stories supporting that feature that are coming into this particular sprint and the tasks associated with those. The idea is that we can bring the metadata in and the data elements so that we're bringing in the progress, the work items, and any resource information around that, so we can actually feed up through portfolio level KPIs and measurements without us having to do anything unnatural from that. Now, there is some translation that happens in this integration. Sometimes the dates are not in the tasks over in Agile tools, but there are dates on the time boxes for the sprints, and we're bringing those over here so they're consistently within the time boxes of the sprints. So we're doing things to help facilitate making this work seamlessly together. Okay. If we look at the same kind of use case using Jira, I might have a team that's using Jira for their Agile efforts. In the same case, with OneConnect, I can pick a project that's being managed with Jira, and I can actually open that project, this e-commerce portal development, and I can open that up in Jira. And the idea here, the same access to that information, the same synchronization of tasks back to Project Online happens just as it does with Visual Studio with the integration that's in place. So notice that I'm now in Jira with the e-commerce portal development. I might be looking at this and managing this through a task or a storyboard just like we did before. And I could actually come in here and actually manage some of these tasks and the updates within them and do things like update the information, or I could log work and other things like that that I might want to do to assign hours and things like I did over in Visual Studio, and things like time spent and planned hours, etc. The idea being is that this gives the Jira teams that you have the ability to continue to use the tool that they've adopted, but fully support your PMO process and your portfolio reporting and visibility in that portfolio in Project Online. The key is, as we're rolling up those details, they're supporting your KPIs here at the portfolio level. So whether things are ahead or behind schedule, those metrics will be consistent up to leadership. This is where the disconnect, that oftentimes the teams are thinking and viewing things in an agile fashion, but your senior leadership and your financial organizations are still looking at traditional business metrics. So whether we're looking at cost variances, whether we're looking at schedule variances, and other information that's relevant to those things, is providing that translation so that we can provide the picture that our leadership wants, even though we're looking to get the benefits at the team level of performing in a more agile fashion. Another one that's available through Office 365 is Office 365 Planner for lightweight projects. Bringing that into the mix using our OneConnect is that you can actually choose a project like this social networking integration and then say, I want to manage this in a lighter weight Kanban fashion in Office 365 Planner. And in doing so, it's going to allow me to use a more simplified card-based drag and dropped approach to this particular project and synchronize these details back to Project Online, just like we did with Visual Studio. And the idea is that you can use drag and drop capabilities on all these different tasks, move things to different states, etc., and update the information as required within each of these different tasks. So the idea here is I'm just showing you 3 different tools that can be used for execution, but all still supporting and a holistic portfolio view within Project Online. Now, on top of that, the reporting is very key. So we can do all kinds of things at this portfolio level. I can come in here and say, you know, maybe I'm interested in some cost reporting for financials, and I want to look at this portfolio from a more cost-oriented perspective by different portfolios or views. This is going to be contributing with data that's coming from those Agile tools, as well as from the traditional waterfall projects that are in here. So we're getting consistent metrics regardless of how the project is being executed on. Now, ultimately, the reporting is key. And with Microsoft's advent of Office 365 and Power BI, we're getting very robust, native, seamless flow of reporting information from Project Online and some of these various other tools into Power BI. So just like all the other tools, Power BI is another tool that's available through Office 365. And in that, you can start fashioning your own reports. Now, Wickersoft has a number of different report packs that allow you to have roughly 50 reports out of the box to get started with. But let me, for the purposes of this topic we're here talking about today, let me stress that we can have more hybrid or bimodal type of dashboards. Like, for example, I've got traditional portfolio metrics or gauges on things like cost and risk and return on investment, a bubble chart on ROI versus risk and where our different projects sit in as far as that matrix goes, different KPIs at a portfolio item level over here on the left, etc. But down the right here, notice I've also got some more agile types of approaches like sprint burn-ups and burn-downs, bug trends, scoping with cumulative flow diagrams on the user stories, whether or not we're increasing or decreasing scope. And the idea here is we can start combining these because we're now combining rich data sets, not only through the integration of Wickersoft's One Connect by bringing these tool sets together, but by the fact that Power BI can use multiple data sources to bring these views together and save you the trouble of doing manual mashup of data, which can be very labor intensive. There is a native OData feed from Project Online to Power BI. So anything we're bringing into Project Online by default can be represented in these reports without you having to do anything other than feed the data within the PPM solution, and the reporting data will be a natural output of that process. Now, here you can drill into specific reports. Like, for example, if I wanted to drill into a portfolio metrics report, I can click on one of those tiles into the dashboard, and it will take me right into that particular report where I can start drilling in and doing more of my feature level types of things. So for example, if I wanted to look at this and see how many of my projects are off track or overdue, or if I wanted to just focus on different project types, like just focusing on just the agile projects, for example, or other classifications of projects that I have, these are things where I can slice and dice through that information very readily. I can also look at other types of information like rolling up across all projects, all the issues and risks that we have across multiple projects without having to go into individual projects to get that particular type of information. We can also drill into the resource status. So as I'm looking at resource information that's being planned natively in Project Online or potentially outside in the other Agile tools, I can start looking at capacity versus our demand. And then I can start focusing in on different things, like, for example, if I was concerned about my business analyst role, or how are we doing capacity versus demand on the business analyst role? What is the overall utilization? And having some more detailed metrics on remaining availability on the resources within that. Or even just a simple availability chart to see in my different roles as I'm thinking about taking on new projects, do I even have the bandwidth or the capacity to even consider yet another project without dropping one as we go on through? And then even complex views where you have multiple dimensions of resource information. For example, a high-level capacity plan by the blue line, detailed project schedules and the resources that are in those by the blue column, and then what comes in the timesheets in the gray column, meaning this is what I thought we were going to do when we did our early planning. Our detailed task-based planning in this particular quarter says that we're planning on using a lot more than we thought, and our timesheets are saying we haven't approached that capacity line yet. So very good pieces of multidimensional information that we can get regarding our resources as well. Now, one of the nice things about Power BI is the different flexibility you have and the way it allows the non-technical user to do things without being a report developer or a developer of any kind. For example, I can actually fashion these dashboards in a variety of ways, or I can leverage ones that are there. I can choose to subscribe to these so that as this dashboard changes or on a frequency that I specify, it can actually send me an email with a link to that report to alert me to the fact that it's something in here that I should pay attention to. I could actually do things like manage alerts, where I can actually go in and say I was interested on a cost-based alert, and I can go in and set a threshold where if the cost in this report goes over a certain amount, send me this report and bring it to my attention. We also have the ability to view these things on our mobile devices. Power BI has a full mobile app that you can go in and look at these things at any given point in time. So I'm looking at a web view, but a phone view, and here's to simulate a view on that. All of your dashboard tiles can now be viewed on that same report through a mobile device, just based on how you would like that to happen, okay? Also, just cool things like, you know, what they call a natural language query, where a user might come in much like you would do a Google search. And they could come in here and say things like show, excuse me, my typing, show average work, and notice the helps that are coming up as I'm doing this. Variance by project name. And it's creating a chart or a report based upon what I'm typing in, not calling up one that exists, but it's actually creating this report based on that. And then different visualizations that we have. I can come in here and say, show this to me in a pie chart, for example. Or I could say, just show it to me in just a list dump that I want to do from a query perspective for the data. And the idea is I can do this as a business user without having to call a report developer to get that. And at any given point in time, I can choose to pin that to a dashboard of my own. And this is now a tile in that dashboard that I have. If I have access to update that dashboard, I can pick any one that I have access to add that to that. And I can start personalizing my own reporting, which combines both Agile and non-Agile projects alike. And then other ways to distribute this information is, it really varies. But the idea is you can go into any individual report. And let's just say the project request or the idea page on the ideas or the project request I showed you early on, doing some analysis on that and be able to distribute these types of reports either by printing them to PDFs, publishing to the web, embedding them into SharePoint pages, or even exporting them to a PowerPoint view is something that many people do. So there's numbers of ways to consume this report other than directly accessing the reports here in Power BI themselves. So hopefully this gave you an idea of some of the power of bringing these different siloed pieces of information and solutions together. And if you're interested, there's some more things that we can dive into in a one-on-one session with you guys. So with that, let's go to some additional use cases you might consider. I talked about Office 365 Planner. Microsoft has added a capability to create links from tasks within Microsoft project plans and then have to do subordinate to those tasks, different to-do level items within there, and you can create those links in your Microsoft project plan. So that's one way to kind of use it as a to-do or punch list item planner to support what's going on in the scheduled tasks within Microsoft Project. With OneConnect, as I showed you in our integration, we have the ability to just build the entire project plan in Office 365 Planner and have the details synchronized to portfolio items in Project Online. A little different use case for those folks that want to use this for lighter weight projects in its totality, but meet the organizational need of having to feed that information to the PMO or to the PPM tool. Also, we have ITSM, as I talked about service management and operational things. We have integration with popular ones like ServiceNow, where the idea is that you can integrate the workloads that are in there via OneConnect to Project and Project Online, and just another use case for you to consider beyond just the Agile pieces. If we look at it, just a partial view of the OneConnect cloud platform we have in the Microsoft Cloud, all feeding data to and from Project Online. We have the Agile tools that we talked about. It can also be used for your financial integration with tools like Oracle, SAP, PeopleSoft, etc. Dynamics 365. We talked about the lighter weight work management tools like Planner, the service management tools like ServiceNow, or even CRM-based tools like Salesforce or Dynamics 365 CRM from Microsoft. Because sometimes those CRM solutions breed the projects. It might be customer-facing projects that as we put proposals out and opportunities as they close, those become our contracts, which become our projects. And that can be part of your intake process as well. So just some ideas here on a lot of the productized connectors that we're delivering to the marketplace today. So just food for thought. So let's wrap this up with some summary and some next step. The value of Agile PPM and unified work management partially is that it keeps users working in their primary and preferred tools and solutions as opposed to forcing them to get into tools that aren't of their choosing, yet still meeting the needs of the organization, leadership, and the PMO. It allows users to work in tools appropriate for their role and maturity. So if a lighter weight plan in Office 365 Planner makes more sense, let them do that in there, but have the hooks in so that it can actually feed Project Online and the portfolio. It also helps adoption by minimizing unnecessary complexity. So users that have simple needs don't have to put a complex solution or learn a complex method in order to participate. And better user experience drives better participation and compliance, means hopefully we'll be chasing down folks less because they're using tools that are more conducive and enjoyable for them to use. Ultimately, it should result in better collaboration across all areas of the business. And the value of integration in general is you get improved portfolio alignment to your organizational goals and objectives, so you get a holistic portfolio that's better aligned. It consolidates all work and resources into a single view for you. And then OneConnect from Wickersoft quickly and reliably brings together disparate business systems. So what was once silos are now working in concert in a seamless fashion and giving us the benefits of having the best of breed tools, but having a focal point for the way we get our information out of it. So we get holistic views of resource availability and efficiency out of it, better forecasting and more realistic expectations, because we can be factoring in more reliably all work and all constraints that we have. Ultimately, improved common governance for planning, executing, and reporting, meaning one intake, one governance and approval, and one tracking at a high level, regardless of what tool sets are being used in detail. So in summary, the concepts that we talked, or the topics we talked about today, a rise of technology is breeding more software and new product development types of projects in our organizations. Agile approaches are increasing in their use for these projects. Organizations are using a variety or a myriad of tools and solutions to plan and manage such projects. PMOs are challenged to provide oversight and reporting across silos of information. And Wickersoft's OneConnect provides seamless integration between Project Online and your Agile and other tools that you may have in your landscape. And then a combined intake, governance, portfolio, visibility, resource management, and reporting can be accomplished without doing laborious manual mashups of data. Using the combination of Project Online, Wickersoft's OneConnect, and the power of Power BI. So if you want to learn more, Wickersoft, we were founded in 2002. We're a global company that was founded as a joint venture with Microsoft. They're actually a partial owner of Wickersoft. We do have a global footprint, and we provide all the consulting services, business applications, things in innovation like we do with OneConnect. We offer managed services to help operate these things for our customers, as well as global support for staffing. We're a triple gold certified Microsoft partner with golds in project and portfolio management, collaboration and content, and cloud productivity. As a triple gold certified partner, less than 1% of Microsoft partners can claim that as part of their achievements. So think of us as a one-stop shop across all the things that you would need to enable this technology and adopt with education and training, and any services you might need to support you across the way throughout that. Now, we focus today on project and portfolio management with project in this left pillar over here, but we have a lot of expertise in helping people enable the Agile pieces in Visual Studio, provide digital workplace and work management within SharePoint that feeds into this as well. And we have a growing practice in Dynamics 365 where professional services automation and field service management also feed into that work management equation, all of which are operated out of the Microsoft Cloud and feed that Power BI solution for reporting and analytics and decision support. So for next steps, just some special offers. If you want to reach out to us, we're happy to offer you a free assessment and do some discovery with you to determine what it would take to get you into this type of technology and help you with an initial roadmap. If you are serious about this and looking to embark upon putting a solution in place, we're happy to provide a Wickersoft Chaperone Project Online trial environment for you so you can get hands-on with this stuff. Or if you have deeper questions beyond just the generalized demo I gave you today, we're happy to schedule a one-on-one demonstration for your organization that's addressed your specific requirements and your pain points, your needs, et cetera, and your use cases. You can just reach out to us at contactus@wickersoft.com. Look at these websites for more information on the different components we discussed today. And we have a whole library of on-demand and upcoming webinars that are there that you can register for or just watch on demand. All the recordings we put up into our channel, and we basically make them available so you can look at other things and do deeper dives into other subject matter areas in this whole realm of project portfolio and work management. Well, we're right at the top of the hour. I apologize for running this close to the top, but hopefully you found value in the material that's in here today. You'll be getting the slides and a link to the recording for this. So feel free to reach out, and we would love to hear from you and have a discussion about how these concepts can help your organization take the ball the next step forward. Thank you again, and have a great day.